Scripture reading this morning will be Genesis chapter 39, verses 20 through 23. Then Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. And he was there in the prison, but the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy, and he gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever they did there, it was his doing. The keeper of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper. You may be seated.
I don't know about you, but when I came into the building, into the foyer, it's like Art Museum meets Mr. Roboto. So it's a unique fusion. In fact, Jeff, that's my name for the robot. It has to be Mr. Roboto. Just has to be, in my opinion. It's good to see you here. I want to remind those who signed up, it's not Monday. Monday's a Memorial Day, obviously, and Tuesday night we're going to the Hope Lodge. So if you signed up to prepare food for that, try to be here by 4:45. We're going to leave at 5 so we can serve them at 5:30. And so that's, again, this coming Tuesday night. I invite you to be back with us tonight. Again, tomorrow's Memorial Day, but tonight I want us to look at the greatest memorial. So we will look at that this evening at 5 o'clock. I don't know about you, but do you like to wait? You know, really, that question really depends on what we're waiting on. I don't mind waiting, paying my federal taxes. I'll get all my stubs and everything, all of the documentation that I need, and I'm not jumping in line in January or February. I'm kind of more March, towards the end, paying my federal tax. I'm not in a rush to give Uncle Sam whatever he needs. I don't mind also waiting when I'm on vacation. Maybe we're at the beach, or we're somewhere where it's nice and we're taking a week off, and maybe we're leaving on Friday. I don't mind waiting on Friday. I can take my time because I'm on vacation. I'm enjoying that. So I don't mind waiting when it comes to that. I don't, this is more sobering thought, but I really don't mind waiting on death. I'm not in a hurry for that final appointment that we all must meet that's waiting for us. I don't mind waiting for that. And so it really depends on what I'm waiting on. But there are other things in life that it really tries me to wait. You know, if I'm in line at a fast food restaurant and I'm in the drive-through service and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. And there's been some times I just like, well, I'm just going to leave and get out of the line before I order because it's too long. There are other things as well. Going on vacation, you plan out everything. We're going to the beach. And, hey, let's leave at this time so we can, get away from rush hour traffic. And we just ride, and before you know it, we're on our way. We think we got out of Nashville, and then we hit some construction site, and we're stuck in traffic or some wreck, and it's like, no, we're not getting there on time. It does depend on what we're waiting on. Let me ask you something. What about with God, waiting? Do you struggle with waiting on God? Maybe you prayed for someone or for something, and you've prayed and you've prayed and you've prayed, only to find out that you continuously wait on God. It would be tough. We could struggle with that. We're in a position or a place in our life where we've gone as far as we can go. There's nothing more that we can do about it. That we need God to help us with that. And we struggle. I want you to think about, sometimes that when we are in a moment of season of waiting where we're really needing God to intervene and to help in a situation that we're in life. I want to tell you something. You're in good company if you're waiting. Abraham, when he was told this great prophecy that would be fulfilled through him, Isaac, wouldn't come to some 25 years later. He had to wait 25 years. Moses would not lead this great exodus until he was 80 years old, 40 years in the field shepherding Jethro's sheep. Paul had spent 3 years in Arabia. We find that in Galatians chapter 1. Elijah had to wait there by the brook. After that, no rain for some time. Noah, before it would rain and preparing this ark, it was a long time before he would ever see rain. He had to wait. And we see the same with Joseph. He also had to wait. You'll notice that it came to pass at the end of 2 full years. Think, what's 2 years? Most people are in college for more than that. Most people work longer than that. Let me tell you something, folks. 2 years may not seem a lot in those things in life, but 2 years is a long time if you are in a dungeon. My math is right. That's 730 days. It's 24 months according to our calendar. Joseph had told the cupbearer, hey, when you get out, remember me, would you? Could you show kindness to me? And the cupbearer, maybe he had good intentions, but he forgot. And it caused Joseph to wait another 2 years. And we question, why God? Why allow Joseph, who was mistreated and all these misfortunate things that happened to him, why did he have to wait 2 more years in this dungeon before Pharaoh had a dream? Why couldn't Pharaoh have that dream maybe a day after the cupbearer went out, or maybe a 1 week or 1 month? But if you read your Bibles in Genesis, you'll get to the very end where we see Joseph is in second in command just below Pharaoh, and all these moments and these mishaps and these misfortunes and these mistreatments that he experienced led him to a position that he was prepared to lead God's people to where they needed to be. That all these things came about so that he could do good, but not only for his people, but for the nation of Egypt. As you think about these things, we've been talking about now is the time. We've been focusing on that this month, and we're at the last Sunday of this month. And we looked at young people and youthfulness and how they can show us some valuable lessons. And with that, we saw Samuel. Now is the time to eat and to hear God's word, even when it's rare that we need to do that. We saw last week with David as a young man. Now is the time to take a stand against the giants of this life that we face. Today with young Joseph, I want us to look at in this part of his life, now is the time. And this is hard. This is really hard to do. And I'm not, me even standing before you and saying it, I'm not a master of this. I struggle with this as well. But now is the time to wait on God. Your focus with Joseph, number one, is mistreatment. Joseph had the right to say, I'm a victim here. He could have used that card. His brothers had mistreated him. What did he do to deserve that? He didn't deserve to be thrown into a pit. He didn't deserve to be sold to the Midianites for some 30 shekels of silver. Yet his brothers wanted to kill him as Joseph was sent by his father to go to his brothers, and they saw him from afar, and they were plotting to kill him. That's how angry they were with Joseph, this dreamer. And yet, it was Reuben, the firstborn, the oldest, Joseph's oldest brother, who calmed the brothers down. No, we're not going to do that. Yet when Joseph came, they tore off that robe. They were jealous of that robe that he had, the robe of multicolors, and they threw him down in the pit. And what I find interesting, if you go back and read it, they were sitting and eating while their young brother was down in that pit. And yet we find that one minute as Joseph came and his life ahead of him, here he was, a teenager. You know, good things had happened to him up until that point. There's no reason why he wouldn't think good things would continue to happen to him as he looked into the future. But like anything, in 1 minute could be one thing, and the next minute life can turn on you. And it did for Joseph. It would be sold 20 shekels of silver. It was sold to the Midianites, and the Midianites would take to Egypt, and it was Potiphar who bought Joseph as property. He would become a slave into Potiphar's home, and yet it's in that situation, in that environment, that God blessed Joseph. So much that Potiphar entrusted Joseph to the keys of the house, everything except for obviously his wife, because that was his wife, not Joseph's wife. And it would seem for Joseph that things were turning to the good. It's like finally some good things are happening. These unfortunate things that happened, that I hadn't deserved these things. And we would all say that. Joseph didn't deserve being thrown in the pit. Joseph didn't deserve to be sold as a piece of property. But it happened. God didn't prevent it. God didn't stop it. These things took place. But God was still with him, and God was still blessing him, even as a slave to Potiphar. But as he was having more responsibility and he was being trusted more by Potiphar, it was temptation that came in. Potiphar's wife came and wanted Joseph to lie with her. He said no. But in that text it said she came day by day. She didn't stop. To a point to where she was more aggressive. Joseph ran, she grabbed the garment, and all of a sudden that was evidence to falsely accuse Joseph that he had harmed her when that was not the case. And Potiphar taking that evidence that his wife said and putting Joseph in prison. Or as the cupbearer said, the dungeon. It's like he got a moment of hope. Things were turning. Then he goes deeper, deeper down. What would you have done at that point? You and your family has turned on you. The people that should be supporting you, the people that should be number one in your life and trying to support you, want success for you, they turned on you. The brothers did. You finally get something positive only to be thrown into a dungeon. It doesn't say this, but I would assume, and I think we can apply this, that there in that dungeon, Joseph had nothing to do but think. Think, think, think. I read this week in preparing the sermon of a couple that was married, and they were believers. They worshiped God, and it was a man that was trying to start his career in comedy. And they would go on retreats, and they were just marriage. It seemed at working together, but as he was starting his career, he found out that his wife had cheated on him. That news devastated him so much that he needed help. And in that process of help, he began to turn on God, to where he no longer followed God. He was against God. If I could follow you, God, and do all these things for you, why would you allow something like this to happen? And he became successful comedian, but guess what? He doesn't believe in God. He doesn't follow God. He doesn't trust in God. There are a lot of people that a lot of bad things happen to them that doesn't seem warranted, that doesn't seem fair, that doesn't seem like it should happen. It's not because they reap what they sow. It's not because of the circle of life and consequences, what goes around comes around, because they hadn't planted those seeds. But what do? Joseph could have said, God, I'm tired of all these things happening. I'm tired of living. I'm tired of life. I'm tired of trusting in you. This is where it's led me to the very bottom of the dungeon. He could have. He would have blamed him. But he didn't. He didn't do that. The second point for you to consider is Joseph's imprisonment. He was in a dungeon. Look at verse 15 of Genesis chapter 40. It's the cupbearer who said this, I have done nothing here that they should put me into a dungeon. Joseph was there as well at rock bottom, literally. Where was God? We are able to see God in the parting of the Red Sea. We're able to see God in the manna from heaven. We can see God when He's on Mount Sinai, but where was God in the dungeon? That's hard to see God in those moments. Moments when we think He's silent. If He's silent, therefore He's absent from our lives. But God was there. God was just as there as He was at the Red Sea, and just as Mount Sinai, and just as the manna from heaven. Look at chapter 39, verse 21. It says, the Lord was with Joseph. He showed him mercy. He gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. The Lord was with Joseph, and Joseph was with the Lord in the dungeon. Now, I want you to footnote this in your mind. Had Joseph's situation changed? No. He was still in the dungeon. Sometimes we think in life that our circumstances have to change in order for God to be with us. And that's not true. Joseph shows us that sometimes your circumstances don't change, but that doesn't mean that God's not with you, because God was with him, and God was blessing Joseph. And even though Joseph remained in the dungeon, and he still had to think a lot of things, there was some good things that were happening. He became keeper of the prison, some moments in life, and yet in this imprisonment that Joseph continued to trust and lean on God as he continued to wait on something good to happen. And as we have dungeon experiences, maybe not like Egypt dungeons, but there are circumstances that we face that we would love for them to change. We would love for something positive to happen. We're waiting for something good to take place with someone or something. But it doesn't happen. It hasn't happened. I'll tell you something, folks. It doesn't mean that God has left you. It doesn't mean that God has forsaken you. God is still with you, just as He was with Joseph in the dungeon of life. And that's an important lesson for us to understand. We find while Joseph was there, I don't know how long he had been there was a cupbearer and a baker that were thrown into there. They had offended the Pharaoh. Don't know exactly what they'd done. Doesn't say. They'd landed there with Joseph in the dungeon. It's amazing how God, in many times, brings alongside people who are going through something similar than what we're going through in our life, that we can connect to. When we're hurting, sometimes we find someone who's also hurting with that same pain. That was true for Joseph. The baker and now the cupbearer had something in common with Joseph. They were in the dungeon together, sharing the same misery. You may find yourself in your own prison-like experiences. Joseph was only human. We would find in the story that the cupbearer and the baker, they had a dream, and Joseph told them, they were looking for an interpreter. He told them only God can interpret dreams, but tell me your dream. And Joseph had a window here. In interpreting these dreams from the cupbearer and the baker, and telling exactly what the dream meant that God gave to him, even for the baker's life, in 3 days you'll die. He told the baker that, but for the cupbearer he said this. I see the humanity in Joseph. We think some of these people are not human. They're just invincible. But they are human. They're flesh and blood just like us. He said, I can just imagine just the heartbreak and the desperation when he said to the cupbearer, remember me. When you go to Pharaoh, remember me. Show kindness. to me. Joseph didn't enjoy being in the dungeon. Who would enjoy being in a dungeon? Who would enjoy being confined? Who would enjoy being at rock bottom of life, literally? Joseph didn't. And the cupbearer was able to get out. And we'd think that maybe, yes, this is the moment, this is the chance for Joseph to finally get out of this situation. We're rooting for Joseph as readers of the Bible. We want Joseph to succeed. He's gone through so much, and these unfortunate things that happen, it's just not fair. And whoever said life was fair didn't live life, because it isn't fair. Joseph shows us that. Tells them to remember him. We find Joseph's disappointment. It doesn't say that, but I can only imagine his disappointment. I can only imagine when the cupbearer and the baker are let out and they're going up to Pharaoh, his just like anybody, this is it? This is my chance. This is my way out. Finally. But look at your Bible, if you will. Look at chapter 40, verse 23. Yet the chief butler did not remember Joseph and forgot. I'll tell you something. Sometimes we blame God falsely and wrongly. It's as if it's God's fault. When we read the very next verse that he stayed 2 full years, it's because of the preceding verse. The one that said that Joseph asked to remember, he did not remember. Here's the cause and effect. He didn't remember. He forgot Joseph. And what happened? 2 full years in the dungeon. 2 more years. The result of him forgetting led him into that situation. Talk about a disappointment. Instead of being rewarded and instead of being remembered, he had been forgotten for 2 more years. 2 more years, Joseph was buried in that dungeon. And after 2 full years, it would be Pharaoh who had a dream. And we can ask the whys and the timing of this and why this length of time and this and that. But that's only for God to know and for us really not to fully know. But I know that in all the things, the bad, the good, the ups, the downs, the disappointments, the successes, it all led to Joseph to be in the position that he needed to be in to save God's people from a great famine. All of that experience prepared him. What did Joseph think about during that time? What was his mind going on? What was he thinking? What was he focused on in day after day, week after week, month after month for 2 full years? I don't know. But I do see in Joseph's life is this: setback after setback after setback after setback. Joseph continued. This is hard, folks. This is really hard. He continued to wait on God. To wait. In conclusion, listen. Are we listening to God? We may find ourselves in our own prison experience, and it's not like Joseph's experience in an Egyptian dungeon. We're not overseas in some type of imprisonment, not like Joseph was. But we have a hard circumstance, a situation. Maybe presently you're in a dungeon-like experience that's not like Joseph, but it feels similar to Joseph. And it feels that way because it's painful. It feels that way because it's just horrible. It's horrible to go through. It's horrible to be in. Oh, if that's you today, I want to tell you something. God hasn't left you. You need to hear this. God is not absent in your life. Just because you're facing a prison dungeon-like experience doesn't mean God has vacated from you. He's still there as he is in parting Red Seas and Mount Sinai's and the manna dropping from heaven. He's still there. I pray that God can give you the strength for you in the setbacks, in the disappointments, in the mistreatments. I pray that God can give you not only the strength to wait, but also the grace to endure as you wait on Him. We need God's help for that. That doesn't come naturally. I've yet to find someone with the spiritual gift of waiting. Yeah, I can wait. I can wait on God. I can wait through hardship. It's hard to do that. And we need prayer. We need God in those setbacks of life to be there for us, to give us what we need as we endure and waiting on Him. Maybe there's someone here this morning that your situation is because of choices that you've made and decisions that you have done, and you know those things are wrong, and those things have led to wrong situations and circumstances. And the good news for you is this: you don't have to keep going that way. There's a great way that you can go, a way that you can turn around and do something better, and that's the way of salvation, the way that which Christ came and lived, and as we partaken of, gave His life up for us so that we could go that way. But you got to believe that He is the Christ, that He is the Messiah, that He is God in the flesh, that He came and lived and died as is prescribed, that is given to us in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You've got to confess His name, and you've got to be baptized. And if you need to do that, you can do that. But if you've done that and you've gone through life and living out faith and you've struggled and you've had some setbacks, maybe you just need some prayers of encouragement. Maybe you need some prayers for strength. Maybe you just need to realize, God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for thinking that you've left me. I'm sorry for thinking that you don't care about me. I see through Joseph that you can still be present in my life, even if I'm in a dungeon, just as much as if I'm on top of the world where I'm second in command. That's the kind of God you are. And I need to see that and appreciate that. And help me, Lord, help me to wait on you. We can help you this morning. Alec Austin has selected the appropriate song. We're going to stand and sing. If we can help you, please all come. Together we stand and sing.